Thank you for inviting me to speak at TiEcon Delhi NCR 2022. I wish I could be with you in person, but I hope that this virtual experience will allow me to communicate the ideas that I want to share with you on a very, very important topic, and that is how we evolve as entrepreneurs from products to platforms. I want to communicate to you the logic of platform markets, how you think like a platform competitor, and how you evolve from a product company into a platform company. So let's begin with some definitions. What is a platform business? Essentially, a platform business creates value by connecting two sides of a market. So it creates and facilitates exchanges between two interdependent markets. Usually there's a producer side and a consumer side. So the idea that the platform business provides is a governance structure, a set of standards and protocols that facilitate these interactions at scale so that you can unleash network effect and create value for both sides. So the interesting distinction between a platform business and a traditional product business is that a product business creates value by owning the means of production. But a platform business creates value by owning the means of connection. It actually facilitates connections between the two parties. So we're moving from sort of a production focus, a linear value chain focus, to a connection focus, an interaction focus, and a mediated value creation focus. Platforms are all around us, folks. Think about a day in your life. You wake up in the morning, you use a phone alarm from Apple or Android, that's a platform. You check the weather through Alexa or Google Assistant, those are platforms. Listen to music through Spotify or Apple Music, check messages with Outlook or WhatsApp, do a workout with Peloton or iFit, take a ride share to work with Ola or Uber, work on client presentations with Microsoft or Apple or Google, meet with teams remotely, order lunch from DoorDash, Uber Eats, or Zomato, find a date for the weekend through Tinder or Bumble, learn something new through Coursera, watch a movie through Netflix. We live in platforms, we eat in platforms, we work in platforms, we travel in platforms, we learn in platforms, we date in platforms. Platforms are all around us. Let me take the example of a platform business that I'm very familiar with, because as some of you might know, I serve on the board of Reliance Jio. And Jio Platforms has really been thinking since it's launched its services in September 2016 as a true platform company. So we think of ourselves as having digital platforms and physical platforms. On the digital platforms, obviously we have the wired and wireless network platform, which is the connectivity or core connectivity platform. We also have cloud platforms on top of that, right, which is the compute platform, the cloud platform, and the edge and supercompute platform. On top of that, we have our tech platforms for blockchain, for big data, and so on. Then we have device ecosystems that are connected to this, apps and content that are connected to this, as well as our geographical locations, the geo centers, which are also platforms. So this platform idea allows us to create an enormous ecosystem, which is almost 450 million subscribers, hundreds of thousands of merchants, app developers, content providers, and has really unlocked a lot of value for consumers and businesses in India. So that's a platform business. Now, platforms are of two types: technology platforms and transactional platforms. A tech platform or a technology platform is a common technology foundation, a base of components and common technologies upon which you can build complementary products and services. So it consists of a core product and a complementary product. So the important thing about a technology platform is that the end user has to invest in the core product before you can use the complementary product. Think about an iPhone, right, or AWS or Xbox. You have to invest in the core platform, and then you can get the apps, you can get the content, you can get the games on top. So that's a technology platform. But what we've seen a lot in the recent days is the evolution of transactional platforms. So transactional platforms are basically also called marketplaces, right? So in marketplaces, basically buyers and sellers are connected through an app or through a digital operator, and there's no investment needed other than downloading the app. So all that transactional platforms do is they match demand and supply and create new ways. And by the way, some platforms can be hybrid. If you think about Amazon, Amazon has a tech platform, the AWS offering, but it also has a marketplace platform, which is the Amazon Marketplace. So it's important to understand the difference between technology platforms and marketplaces or transactional platforms. Let's now break down the anatomy or the components or the elements of a platform. First, there is a connection between two or more sides. For example, Uber makes a connection between riders and drivers. iPhone makes a connection between users and end users and developers via its app store. Okay? So connection has to be made between two or more sides. By the way, sometimes a health insurance company in the United States, for instance, may be a three-sided platform. You might have consumers or patients, you might have providers like hospitals, and then you have payers like employers. Right? So connection. The second thing is a value unit. The value unit is what the two sides exchange. It is the unit of value that defines the transaction, defines the exchange between the two parties. In the case of Uber, the value unit is a ride, right? It is a ride. In the case of Oyo Rooms, it is a room night. In the case of iPhone, it is basically the mobile phone plus the device plus the apps. Right? This value unit is facilitated by the rules of engagement. That's the other thing that a platform consists of. So the rules of engagement include the fee structure, the regulations, the payment structure, the safety rules, the governance rules, and so on. And finally, there's the infrastructure that makes the platform run. For example, in the Uber case, you have the app, you have the geodata. In the case of iPhone, you have the API access, the core product, and so on. So in summary, a platform consists of multiple sides and a connection, a unit of value or a value unit, rules of engagement, and underlying infrastructure. Now, platforms are not created overnight. And many products actually don't start out as platforms. This is very important for you as entrepreneurs to understand. You don't have to build a platform business from day one, particularly in the technology platform world. This happens in the technology platform world. In the marketplace world, the world of marketplace platform, you do build both sides to start with. But in a technology platform, you can start out as a plain product company. Let's look at the old 20-year-old, 25-year-old example of the Apple iPod. Before the Apple iPod was a platform, it was a product. It was a hard drive. It was a hard drive where you basically, as the end user, collected a bunch of content and stored it on the hard drive. So that was, the user was in the middle, content was, loaded on, and Apple basically provided the hardware. This is the linear model. This is not a platform business. Post-platform, what happened was Apple realized that they could actually insert themselves into the middle of a Y-shaped market, where one side you have the end users and the other side you have the content developers. So now you are able to actually make a market by connecting these two, and you become the toll keeper, you become the orchestrator. Now you created a triangular market, a Y-shaped market, a multi-sided market, where you have play a very important role of that player in the middle. So it is not until you connect two sides together that you are a platform company. That's very important for you to understand. That how can my product become a platform? I connect the second side to it. It's the same thing with Facebook. Facebook initially started out as a single-sided platform, a product. It was not a platform. It was essentially connecting users or people with each other in a social network. That's not a platform. That is merely a product market. And by the way, WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger are similar. They're communication products. They're not necessarily platforms. It is not until Facebook connected the other side, which is advertisers and app developers and partners, the monetization became possible only when the second side was brought on. So that's important. It's an important insight. To move from a product to platform, you need to bring on that second side. Usually it says monetization side. And that is how a technology product evolves into a platform. And by the way, any product, I would think, and I would contend, can become a platform. I have some examples here. How could you convert Tide, which is a detergent, into a platform? Imagine that Tide partnered with Uber to create Uber Tide or Tide or Uber Clean, which is a marketplace that collected your laundry and then sent it to laundromats, all orchestrated by Tide. So that would make it into a laundry marketplace operator. WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a product today. It's not a platform because there is no monetization. There is no second side. WhatsApp simply connects people with other people. This is the single reason why Facebook invested $5 billion in Geo. The reason they invested in Geo is because they understand that WhatsApp has a massive customer base in India, over 400 million users of WhatsApp. And now the opportunity that we have is to bring in the monetization by bringing in the vendors and partners on the other, merchants on the other side, and building WhatsApp into a true commerce platform, two-sided platform, just like WeChat is in China. WeChat is a platform, WhatsApp is a product, and we can convert it into a platform. So similarly, a seller of private planes like Cessna could create a marketplace for plane capacity or private plane seats. And instead of selling planes, they could sell capacity and they could become like an Uber. Okay. So this is the idea of Uberizing Tide. You could create laundry as a service by Tide and Tide Cleaners, which is really kind of laundromats partnering with Uber to create a marketplace for laundry. Now let me spend some time talking about the evolution of platforms. So the construct I want to share with you is the idea of the platform evolution framework. Platforms evolve through 5 stages: inception, scaling, monetization. Then you need to protect and expand the platform. That is the journey, the life cycle of a platform. Let's begin with understanding what these steps are. At the inception stage, your job is to understand the problem that we want to solve for the marketplace, the two sides that we want to connect, and how we can create value for both sides. So that's really the value proposition development stage. Next phase is scaling, launching and overcoming the chicken and egg problem, right? Launching the platform and taking it public and building scale, driving adoption, building network externalities, increasing the installed base. Third phase is monetization. Then you have to convert customers into paying customers. You have to design the business model to capture value and to capitalize on the network effects that you've created. Phase 4, you start to worry about other people competing against you. You built a platform, you monetize it, you need to protect it now. Right? You need to anticipate the potential threat from platform competitors. You need to protect your platform business from being poached or being disrupted by competitors. And lastly, on an ongoing basis, you need to think about expansion. You need to think about growth. You need to grow the business and by moving into adjacent market and adjacent capabilities. Let's look at each of these stages in more detail. At the inception stage, the core issue that you're addressing is, what is the problem I want to solve? What are the multiple sides of my market? How can I create value for both sides in this marketplace? So this is the stage that you'll start if you already have a product that you want to convert into a platform, or you're building a transactional platform market from scratch. So the key problems that you want to address here, the key business problem you want to look at is, what are the pain points? What are the sources of friction? What are the sources of inefficiencies? And by the way, you cannot create a platform business unless there is friction and inefficiency in buyers and sellers and different parties connecting together. Because if there isn't friction to be addressed, if there isn't friction in the first place, there's no value proposition, right? So you need to then create a platform or a connection that alleviates some of these pain points, that creates value for all the users. So in the inception stage, you go through again a series of steps, identify the pain points, figure out 2 large addressable markets that you can connect to create indirect network effects, identify the value that you can create for each of these addressable market, build a value proposition that resonates with both sides, and then design the interaction mechanism that connects the 2 sides. So next is scaling. You've identified the marketplace. Let's take an example, by the way, that you want to create a platform market for pet sitting. So in pet sitting, we've identified that there are people who have pets, and then there are people who want to provide pet sitting services. Those are two sides of the marketplace. And then we bring those together. And what is the friction? I can't find somebody who's local, somebody I can trust, and somebody who's available right now. So that is the pain point that I have. I want loved, local, and readily available care for my pet. On the other hand, for the pet care provider, their problem is finding the right customers, finding somebody who I can pet sit for within my schedule, and also the trust factor, right? So that's kind of the equation that you're solving. You bring these parties together. So next thing that you need to think about is scaling. In scaling, it's all about launching and creating a critical mass. So here the problem that we want to solve is the chicken and egg problem, right? You've got buyers, but you have no sellers, or you have sellers and you have no buyers. It doesn't work. So at Uber, when it started off, in India, for instance, they needed to have more cars in order to attract riders, but they needed to have more riders in order to attract drivers. So that's the chicken and egg problem, right? So the problem in a transactional platform is that the value of the platform grows for one side as the other side is bigger, and vice versa. So you kind of need to address both sides. So my recommendation to you in scaling is first pick one side to start with. One side is usually more important at the start. By the way, in the technology platform is usually the end user side, right? As opposed to the provider, the content provider. And transactional platform, more often it's the seller side or supplier side. So for instance, if I'm going to launch Uber in India, I need some cars, I need some drivers, without which there is no value proposition, right? So some examples here, for instance, is YouTube first brought content creators on board because content needed to be on the platform before YouTube could become interesting to a consumer audience, right? Same thing with Etsy. Etsy is an artisan marketplace. The first focus was on artisans, bringing them on board, because without those artisans, buyers are not going to show up. So you really need to figure out which is that first side that you're going to focus on, and you need to start building that side. Then what you need to do is to seed that side with inject liquidity by seeding that side that you've picked with artificial supply, right? So for example, when PayPal got started, they gave $10 to every new customer who would sign up, and $10 to customers for referrals. So that created a strong incentive to bring the buyers on board. Etsy went to craft fairs and tried to recruit artisans to open an online store, right? And similarly, Airbnb in its early days tried to get customers from property owners through Craigslist and newspaper ads. And what you might also want to do is to subsidize one side in order to attract a large market. And this subsidy can be done, like think about how Facebook actually gives its product for free, because the monetization happens on the other side. So one side is completely free, the other side, which is the advertisers, is monetized, right? Uber India, when it got started, actually paid drivers a salary or a bonus, because without that, they wouldn't have taxi drivers or or car drivers join them. Interestingly, funnily, think about the fact that if you go to a club, you have ladies' nights, right? Women get in for free. It's interesting for you to reflect on why is the men the money side and women the subsidy side. That's something to think about. But there again, you subsidize women because without women, you're not going to attract men to come into the club. Then once you've scaled up one side, you need to scale the other side. And in scaling the other side, what you want to do sometimes is use a zigzag strategy where you inject liquidity on one side, and then if you find the other side is lagging, you go to that side and inject liquidity. So this is when you're trying to balance the network on both sides. So let's say that I'm at Airbnb and I have more hosts than guests, then I might subsidize guests. If I now find I have more guests than hosts, I might create incentives for hosts. So that's the zigzag strategy, that you go back and forth between the two sides to make sure that you are balancing your network, right? And you can use seeding and subsidizing techniques on both sides to grow the marketplace, grow the platform in a balanced way, right? By the way, you can scale both sides simultaneously, not use the zigzag strategy, and that is expensive though. Uber did it, they did it on both sides, but it's risky, it requires a lot of capital. Step 4 then is monetization. Monetization is now I have brought customers in. Now I have WhatsApp and I have, 2 billion users. I need to monetize. I need to convert some of these into paying customers. So monetization is about building a business model or a value capture mechanism so that I can have a stable and a viable business. I have created the network effects. I have built my installed base. I've created critical mass. Now I need to monetize. By the way, interestingly, when Jio got started, if you remember in 2016, Jio offered 3 months completely free, including data, unlimited data, and so on. And then 3 more months, the offer was extended. You know why? Because that allowed Jio to build critical mass very quickly. Within 170 days, Jio acquired 100 million customers. And then when the meter was turned on, a significant percentage of those converted into paying customers. So it sounds like a lot of money to be wasted giving 6 months of network and apps for free. But actually, when you think of it as a customer acquisition play, it was very efficient and a very quick way to acquire millions and millions of customers, right? So that's the monetization. Here, the problem we're looking for is how can I reduce the customer acquisition cost and how can I design a sustainable and viable revenue stream? By the way, this is where Uber and all and Ola are struggling even today. Unit economics is what you need to focus on. Here, you need to focus on your CAC, which is your customer acquisition cost, relative to the CLV or the customer lifetime value. And that customer lifetime value has to be 3x or more than your customer acquisition cost. So the unit economics minus, once you remove subsidies, your business has to be viable. So there are many monetization models that you can use for platforms. You can have transaction fees. That's how Uber works, right? And this is useful when the transaction value varies over time. But when you have regular ongoing access, or you can use a subscription model or an access fee. Sometimes you can have a premium access fee that you can provide the base service for a low price, but then you can have a premium service for an additional fee, right? Or you can have advertising. This works in a technology platform where one side of the network is users and you're going to monetize the users through advertisers, right? It's ad revenues. And sometimes you can monetize by creating complementary products and services, such as you create a marketplace. For instance, now in the metaverse, you're creating an NFT marketplace inside a platform. You can sell NFTs. So that is an example of creating products and services. So these are the different business models or monetization frameworks you can think about for platforms. Step 4 in your platform is I have now built it, I have scaled it, I have monetized it, I need to protect, because now other people start to jump into my platform, they start to compete. So at protection, what I want to do is to anticipate the threats from potential platform competitors and protect my customers from being poached or being disrupted by competitors. Platform markets are dynamic. Platform markets are competitive. Remember Friendster? Remember, MySpace? Those were all platforms in the early days that they got competed away by Facebook. And now Facebook is struggling against TikTok. So that's the idea, that you need to continuously evolve your platform and make sure that you're competitive, that you are that you're challenging that you're being challenged by the disruptors and you stay one step ahead of them. And this problem happens even to mature platforms. Look at a platform like Netflix. Worldwide, very well established, but today platforms like Disney Plus are competing against them very aggressively with a lower price and the access. And Disney has also acquired Hotstar and is very aggressive in India. And a projection is by the end of this year, 2022, Disney Plus would have actually crossed Netflix in the number of subscribers. And in a few years, they may even cross them in terms of revenues. So, Netflix continues to make investments in proprietary content and content in vernacular languages to be able to continuously stay ahead of Disney. And the reason Disney Plus has been successful as a competitor is because they came with a very strong set of content assets. Okay. So there are many strategies that you can use for protecting your platform. You can increase switching costs. Apple does a really good job of this by using iMessage and creating an integrated walled garden that makes it difficult for you to jump. You can increase multi-homing costs, make it expensive for people to be on multiple platforms. So supposing you make your software proprietary to your platform, then if they move hardware, let's say games, Xbox makes games only for its platform. So if you want to play another game on the Sony platform, then you have to buy the PlayStation. That's called multi-homing, right? Prevent disintermediation of platforms. By the way, for example, what is disintermediation? Let's say I create a platform that provides maid or cleaning services. So I get the cleaning service or a maid, then I tell the maid, you know what, why don't you work directly? Why don't you just, don't worry about the why are you giving 30% or 40% to the platform? What you want to make sure is that you're providing valuable services and you're not allowing the buyer and seller to communicate directly. This is why Airbnb makes it really difficult for you to communicate and transact outside the platform. So same with the dating platforms, right? Match.com, Bumble, and so on. You can't do messaging outside the platform. That is deliberate. You need to also innovate on the platform, continue to innovate and make sure that you're not getting left behind. This is why, why Facebook is now aggressively promoting Reels and looking at the next generation evolution, because they are being attacked by platforms, more modern platforms, newer platforms like TikTok. And what you want to also do is to avoid envelopment. What is envelopment? Envelopment is the idea that your product becomes part of a larger offering that your competitor offers and gives it away for free. Envelopment usually happens because a Google or a Microsoft or an Apple can afford to give away that little thing that you are doing. So what you want to do is to make sure that you are also partnering with platform partners and that you are staying one step ahead of the competition. Those are some platform protection strategies. And finally, we have expansion. You need to think about growth for your platform business. And growth and expansion is about growing the market beyond your addressable market through adjacencies. And these adjacencies can be of many types, right? You can have adjacent customers, you can have adjacent geographies, and so on. So platform markets will grow in different ways, and you can look at different vectors of growth and the whole idea is to increase your TAM or your total addressable market and strengthen your competitive advantage by deepening and broadening your relationship with customers. So that's the expansion ideas. There are lots of ways in which you can expand your platform business. Expand the share of wallet, which is the same customer, same product, but more spend. That's what Amazon does through Amazon Prime. Share of wallet expansion, extract more revenues from the customer. Product expansion, give new products to the customer, right? So offer other complementary products, like Uber Eats is a good example of a complementary product. Category expansion, you can go into new categories that you didn't serve before. Amazon continues to expand into new categories. Geographical expansion, right? Get into new geographies. Customer expansion, adjacent customer segment. Let's say you serve a consumer segment, you could now go into the small business segment or the enterprise segment. And capability extension. Think what Amazon did with AWS. They used the capability of data centers and they built a completely new product. So let's look at a quick example of all these strategies in action in the context of Uber. So Uber could do share of wallet expansion by getting into adjacent needs like Uber Eats, right? Uber Eats is now, and now they're doing grocery delivery. So I start to capture more revenue from the customer. Customer expansion, I could actually now create Uber Freight, right? Uber Freight is a B2B customer. It's a different customer that they serve. Capability expansion, I could use my mapping and GPS capability to create autonomous vehicles. So this is Uber's advanced technology group that is actually building autonomous vehicle, the capability expansion. Product expansion, right? You have Uber Moto, you have Uber Rickshaw, you have Uber, in different forms. You have Uber Copter. So there are different product lines. And within that, you have Uber X and Uber Comfort, Uber XL. Those are all product expansion. Geographical expansion, of course, right? Different geographies. And category expansion actually is moving into new spaces like helicopters or, autonomous taxis and so on. So those are the different vectors. And what you got to do is to make sure you are going after the vectors that have the most TAM expansion and at the least possible risk and the least possible cost. So those are the vectors along which you can think about expanding your platform business. So in summary, folks, we've talked about the platform evolution framework as a way to manage your platform on an ongoing basis and evolve from a product business into a platform business. And this proceeds in 5 stages. Inception, where you solve for the value proposition and the rules of engagement. Scaling, where you solve for the chicken and egg problem and the build critical mass. Monetization, where you solve for the unit economics problem and solve for the viability and business model sustainability. Protection, where you solve for the competitive problem and you look at how you can sustain yourself and continue to innovate. And expansion, where you solve for the growth problem, where you look at how you can continue to expand and build a business and to make it healthy. Folks, I'm going to summarize by saying that in India, we have lots of really interesting product companies that can evolve into platform companies. Those are the technology companies that started out as product companies. But there are also lots of transactional platforms, marketplaces, which started out as platforms. I hope I've been able to give you some perspective, some ideas, some advice, some frameworks, and some best practices for thinking about how you can build your product into a platform. And once you're a platform, how you can enhance, grow, and develop your business. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity that you've given me to speak with you. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference and you found these ideas helpful. And I hope to see you in person in India sometime soon. Thank you very much and have a wonderful rest of the conference.